The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
The number 12 carries religious, mythological, and magical symbolism, generally representing perfection, entirety, or cosmic order in tradition since antiquity. It's also the number of qualifiers teams in the NAIA are allowed to send to the national championships, and the most frequent number won by Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. None of that is scientifically researched because why should I be the last guy on earth to fact check things before I post them on the internet? The first citation is from my former roommate Willie Evans and the rest of the 12 House crew as we celebrate the 12 House New Year on 12/12 at 12/12. This is Short Time Shots, your mostly daily recap of the scores and more from around the world of wrestling. I'm Jason Bryant, and I'll probably be recording this around 12/12 on the 13th. By the way, it's never the best look to apologize in the intro of a podcast, so I won't. However, why no shots the past few days? Well, after realizing it's extremely difficult to schedule and cultivate this type of thing while working an event, I was at the Canadian Olympic trials the previous week. It's tough to do when you don't have another parent around. My wife is also traveling for business, so in lieu of actually doing something like this the last couple days, I've actually had to, do that whole parent thing by feeding my tiny humans. They're great, but it's a handful. I'm sure if you're a parent, you absolutely know it. I did decide to push one out today. Why? Well, the longer you put off doing something, the longer it takes for you to, come back, actually do it, something like that. Anyway, the Minnesota beer of the night was French River by Wooden Hill Brewing, and to be honest, I didn't really care for it too much. It's a 6.5% Saison. It tasted better when I had it at the brewery in Edina. Now, the brewery in Edina, if you come here for the Nationals, killer burgers. So it's kind of it's quality. That's actually a good spot for lunch if you're in the South Metro. It just could be a bad can. I did contemplate not even mentioning this, but to be fair and to be consistent, because this show is all about consistency, I did include the Minnesota beer of the night. New patron, thanks to my man Tony White back in Virginia. He is the newest team member of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. Find out how to be the cool guy like Tony later on in the show. Now to Thursday's scores, because as I look over, the clock still says Thursday. In Division II, number 2 Nebraska Kearney dropped in-state rival Chadron State 26-16 in western Nebraska. You ever been to Chadron? It's up there. Top-ranked Wesley Dawkins bumped up to 141 pounds and picked up a major decision for the Lopers. Returning national champion Matt Malcolm, which I realized I'd been spelling his name incorrectly in my database. Yeah, only one L in Malcolm. Basically, pronounce it, that's how you would spell it. Anyway, he picked up a win at 165. Number 6 Upper Iowa cruised past Southwest Minnesota State 28-6 in Northern Sun action. The Peacocks' top-ranked 197-pounder All-American Nick Baumler earned a major decision there. In Division III, number 10 North Central saw ranked wrestlers Robbie Prieston and Cody Baldridge pick up wins in the Cardinals' 32-9 win over UW Oshkosh. Number 19 Central College smashed Nebraska Wesleyan 45-4 in what used to be the Iowa Conference. Now it's the American Rivers Conference. In the loss, Nebraska Wesleyan All-American Eron Haynes scored 23 points for the second time this year. Yeah, he had a 23-13 major decision win. Haynes also has scored 20 points 3 different times this season. Only one of those were technical falls. Wacky. St. Olaf put 10 wrestlers on the mat and scored a 45-12 win over NAIA Waldorf on Thursday night. So far, if you are keeping score, the Office of St. Olaf President David Anderson hasn't even acknowledged receipt of my interview request as the school announced it would be ending the sport at the end of the year. That's a duck. Vanguard, an NAIA school in California, won the school's first dual meet in 39 years as the Lions beat another California NAIA school, Life Pacific, 31-19. No, they have not had a 39-year losing streak. Vanguard reinstated the wrestling program this season. No report from NAIA Central Christian and its duel against NJCAA Neosho. Southwestern Oregon Community College beat Division III Pacific, the one in Oregon, 16-12. If that score seems a little off, it's not something I really like to focus on, but this duel featured 4 double forfeits and 2 of the regular variety. On Wednesday, Division II Lander earned its first win in school history, a 41-13 win over NAIA Truett McConnell. I wanted to make sure this was in there. That's part of the reason I did shots, is because I've mentioned a lot of the first wins, just like Vanguard. I've mentioned Mount Olive. I've mentioned Davis and Elkins. I wanted to make sure I mentioned Lander and head coach R.C. LaHaye for the win there. Also of note last night, well, by the time you hear this, 2 nights ago, Wednesday, Johnson & Wales, more than just a cooking school, beat the U.S. Coast Guard Academy on criteria in a battle of 2 of the top programs in New England. In the notables on Friday, NC State is at Appalachian State, while Lock Haven hosts Navy at Red Lion High School in Pennsylvania. That's not exactly close to Lock Haven, but it's close enough for it to be a somewhat of a home duel. Announced this event last year. It was called the Rumble in the Jungle. Last year, Lock Haven beat Arizona State. It was a good thing. Mike Catullo, the head coach at Red Lion High School, is actually holding out on Trogue's Matt Elf. Not really happy about that. That's all there is in D1. In D2, St. Cloud State is at Northern State, and Alderson Broadus is at West Virginia Tech, which is in the NAIA. Small schedule in D3, as Augsburg does host Division II Southwest Minnesota State. Wartburg is at Cornell College, and UW Stevens Point is at UW Eau Claire. We got a boatload of duels in the NAIA at Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Schools involved there in the duels are Bluefield, Central Baptist, Reinhardt, Life, Lyon, Jamestown, the one in North Dakota, Campbellsville, Cumberland University, Kaiser, and Southwest Virginia of the NJCAA. From the Daily Wrestling News, Menlo remains number 1 in the most recent NAIA women's rankings released on Thursday. The Oaks lead Jamestown, the one in North Dakota, Campbellsville, and Life in the top 5. The Daily Princetonian, the student newspaper at Princeton University, yeah, they're smart, features the lone woman on the wrestling team there at Princeton, which I've said 3 different times, Dimitra Yankopoulos. Yeah, said that one right. Couldn't say Princeton right 3 different times. Molly Duffy of the Gazette, that's the Cedar Rapids variety, identifies what exactly the issue is in Iowa with sanctioning girls wrestling. It's a pretty solid read, and yes, there is a lot of wrestling news because of women's and girls wrestling. Tom Hausnick of the Allentown Morning Call in Pennsylvania features the Lehigh Valley wrestling scene and the importance of the upcoming super tournaments like the Walsh Ironman and the Beast of the East, and how they relate to postseason success in the rugged state of PA. Northwestern added 2-time All-American Emory Parker to its coaching staff on Thursday. Parker was the 3-time NCAA qualifier and one of the nation's leaders in having his first name spelled incorrectly. Communications offices at Lehigh and Ohio State did some solid work, as Lehigh featured All-American Jordan Cutler, while Ohio State featured All-American Luke Pletcher in features on their respective .coms. 5 Point Move talks about the underrated bracket at 57 kilos and also has an interview with Gon' give it to you, Xavier Johnson. That's just terrible on my part. And finally, one of the hardest working and probably overworked SIDs in college wrestling, Jim Sheehan, has announced his retirement from Hofstra. Jim basically did it all with Hofstra Wrestling. Photos, releases, everything. He had a number of sports to deal with, but he's a former National Wrestling Media Association SID of the Year. Got a thick Long Island accent. The guy has been an absolute rock in the sport of wrestling, going back to even the before Tom Ryan years there at Hofstra. So, Jim, wish you the best. You are one of the best, and you have been a great asset, not just to the sport of wrestling at Hofstra, but to the sport of wrestling as a whole. Bless you and Godspeed. We will see you down the road. On the network, my 35th podcast. Yes, 35th. State of Wrestling was launched. It's the 33rd show ever released on the Matt Talk Podcast Network, and this show is an organizational one for the National Wrestling Coaches Association. The first guest, naturally, Mike Moyer, the executive director of the NWCA. Had I mentioned Luke Pletcher earlier? Well, speaking of Luke Pletcher, love that segue. He joined Super Rob Walco. In case you're Super Rob was his screen name from like the 8th grade on the Matt.com. Now he's like graduated college from Bucknell and doing a podcast on my network with Tristan Warner, who's from Old Dominion, where I went. Go figure. So anyway, Luke Pletcher's on their show, the PA Power College Wrestling Podcast. You can get those stories and more from Matt Talk Online's daily wrestling newsletter. At this point, I'm saying screw it. I'm not editing. Sign up for free at matttalkonline.com/news and get today's top wrestling stories from around the world delivered to your inbox for free every single morning. It's sponsored by Resolite. Boom. Thanks, guys. If you'd like to support the show and all the on-demand audio offerings, free newsletters, and historical research, you can support this program and the network by making a small monthly contribution or one-time donation by going to matttalkonline.com/join the team, just like Tony White did earlier. You can make a contribution through Venmo, PayPal, buymeacoffee.com, or Patreon, which is where you get those monthly perks and things like that, like the shout-out on the show, branded shirts, Matt Talk glasses, hats, preview guide access, shout-outs on the show, like I just said, and even a chance to pitch an idea for Short Time or even be on Short Time. Aaron Swayze's been on Short Time. Yep. Short Time Wrestling Podcast, again, is outfitted by Compound Clothing. That's all I've got for you today, episode 584, which was not exactly a cleanly written or edited episode, but that's what it is, and it takes you the time. Oh, that's a bad setup. Let's start this. You know how it ends. Remember, I'd like to thank you for spending... No, that's not how it goes. No, it's like, as always, yes, that's how we go. I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me, because you've always got time for short time. Number 6, Upper Iowa, cruise past Southwest Minnesota State. Let's try that again. Marker. Number 6, Southwest. That's not right either. I mentioned Mount Olive. I've mentioned... Yeah, let's try that again.